My name is Amelia, and I didn't grow up in a wealthy household. Despite the modest beginnings, I managed to secure a job and even tied the knot with Edward, who works at a luxury hotel. Initially, I envisioned the happily ever after, but little did I know that life had different plans. My childhood home was far from affluent, but I harbored no resentment toward my parents. They sacrificed their luxuries for me, taking me to places and imparting knowledge about diverse cultures. I often wondered if their passion for geography surpassed my own needs. As a child, I felt they were going above and beyond for my sake. Determined not to burden my parents further, I decided to work right after middle school. Despite my mother's advice to complete high school, I was resolute. My father supported my decision, emphasizing that they had enough savings to send me to high school. Their encouragement warmed my heart, but more than that, I yearned to alleviate their struggles as soon as possible. I'll start working as soon as I graduate. The sooner I start, the sooner I'll earn more, I assured them, though the uncertainty of finding a job loomed. My childhood friend Jessica, an immigrant like me, shared a similar financial background. Our bond grew as we navigated the challenges together. Learning Spanish through conversations with Jessica turned out to be a valuable skill. By ninth grade, I could hold conversations in Spanish proficiently. Coincidentally, a travel agency recognized this skill and decided to hire me. While Jessica and I drifted apart after leaving school, my focus on work remained unwavering. Time passed, and at 26, I often found myself working in the lounge of a hotel, a place that had become familiar through frequent visits for my job. The high-end yet cozy ambience of the place, along with reasonably priced snacks and coffee on the menu, became our go-to spot for staff meetings. Edward, who worked as a waiter there, managed to strike up conversations in Spanish, likely due to the hotel's international clientele. Occasionally, I found myself in the company of foreign guests, and something just clicked between Edward and me. Our whirlwind romance led to marriage, a profound experience for a girl from a humble background. However, the excitement of starting a new life took an unexpected turn. Prior to our wedding, Edward expressed a heartfelt request. He wished to live in his family home, as he was concerned about his widowed mother living alone. Considering my remote work flexibility, Edward believed it would be convenient for me to keep an eye on his mother and manage household chores. Despite the potential convenience, I couldn't immediately agree. During my initial visit to Edward's family home, his mother's reaction to my educational background raised concerns. When asked about my university, I truthfully mentioned not attending and only completing middle school. Her silent disapproval was evident, and I sensed that she looked down on me. Casually bringing up my concerns to Edward, I questioned whether his mother viewed me negatively. He chuckled, assuring me that his mother trusted him and harbored no ill feelings towards me. With this assurance and Edward's promise to address any issues with his mother on my behalf, I agreed to move in with his family. However, reality struck once I started living there. Despite the warm exchanges between Edward and his mother in my presence, her attitude towards me was markedly different, distant, and cold. "Amelia, just make sure you don't hold Edward back," my mother-in-law would emotionlessly instruct, her tone akin to giving orders to a servant. The disdain in her eyes was unmistakable, leaving me with a lingering sense of being looked down upon. It was a sentiment I couldn't shake off. However, in a crucial moment, Edward stood up for me. "Don't worry. Amelia is doing a great job at work too," he reassured his mother. Yet this defense was met with a brief stern expression from my mother-in-law, a detail I couldn't ignore. Despite this, I resolved to handle any issues that arose my way, thinking that open communication with Edward would make things work out. We began our cohabitation with a positive spirit, fueled by the belief that, as a family living together, we could overcome any potential odd vibes. Unfortunately, reality, as it often does, didn't favor us. One day, while engrossed in my computer work, my mother-in-law abruptly barged into my room, her tone carrying a hint of anger. "Hey, Amelia, when are you going to clean my room?" It needs to be done by 10 o'clock a.m. every day, she insisted, revealing a rule I had never heard of before. I was taken aback, having agreed to handle household chores, but the extent had never been clearly defined. I would have appreciated it if she had communicated this from the beginning. Despite my surprise, I quickly wrapped up my work, apologized, and began cleaning her room. As I diligently attended to the task, my mother-in-law remained in the living room, casually watching TV and munching on snacks. It became apparent that my commitment to my job and schedule clashed with her expectations. Edward had previously expressed concerns about his mother's health. Despite my initial assumption that my mother-in-law might struggle with physical tasks, she appeared more sprightly than I had imagined, effortlessly commanding me to clean her room. Once that task was completed, she promptly instructed me to start preparing dinner, emphasizing her preference for bland flavors. This unexpected request was followed by a directive to go shopping for ingredients immediately. While I thought it might be too early to start cooking, I decided to comply and headed out for groceries. Upon my return, I found my mother-in-law predictably still at leisure. Suppressing my irritation, I chose to hold back and focus on getting the chores done. Perhaps she was testing my patience, and I believed she would eventually understand and appreciate my efforts. However, this hope lingered for months as the demands became increasingly nitpicky. Whether it was a complaint about being 5 minutes late with the laundry or dissatisfaction with the cleanliness of the bathtub, the nitpicking reached an almost obsessive level. Before I realized it, I found myself shouldering all the household chores while my mother-in-law continued to laze around at her leisure. The growing concern that this situation might adversely affect my job prompted me to take action. Waiting until evening when my mother-in-law had retired for the night, I decided to confide in Edward. I shared my frustration, expressing that I felt constantly criticized and fatigued. To my surprise, Edward chuckled dismissively and said, "Come on, that can't be true. Mom's a kind person. There won't be any issues as long as Amelia doesn't do anything strange. Please try to get along with her." He simply wouldn't believe me, perhaps because my mother-in-law consistently doted on him and never voiced complaints to me. When Edward was present, she would even suggest that I take a break and enjoy some tea. Despite these occasional moments of respite, my patience with the relentless cycle of household chores was wearing thin. I found myself tethered to domestic responsibilities throughout the day, often working on my job late into the night. Honestly, my trust in Edward was waning, and without a change, the mounting stress threatened to overwhelm me. In the midst of this turmoil, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "Amelia, I'll be away for about a week in roughly 3 months. Make sure you keep the house in order, okay?" This revelation caught me off guard, and when I inquired about the sudden trip, she casually mentioned that Edward had suggested an overseas vacation. Strangely, Edward hadn't uttered a word about it to me, leaving me feeling excluded and burdened with the responsibility of maintaining the house. Feeling the urgency to address the situation, I broached the topic with Edward that night. His response was, "Oh, Mom already told you, but you're coming too, right?" It turned out there was a miscommunication, and my mother-in-law had misled me. Despite Edward's desire for me to join the trip, the prospect of spending extended time with her soured the idea for me. In frustration, I expressed my reluctance to go, explaining that I couldn't possibly enjoy the trip with his mother. Edward, taken aback, completely lost his composure and lashed out, creating a tense and strained atmosphere in our already challenging living situation. Edward's response to my reluctance shocked me. "Amelia, what the heck are you saying? How long are you going to keep up this childish nonsense? I won't allow you to speak ill of Mom like that. You better reflect on this. It's a vacation abroad for crying out loud, and I want to enjoy it too," he retorted. The lack of trust from Edward was disheartening, and the prospect of staying in the house had become nothing short of agony for me. Determined to prove the truth, I took action the next day when Edward was off work. During breakfast, the 3 of us gathered, and I decided to confront my mother-in-law. "You're trying to exclude me from the trip abroad, aren't you?" I challenged. Her response was defiant. stating that if I wanted to come, I should just join. Edward intervened, urging me to apologize to his mom and accusing me of being defiant and childish. Refusing to back down, I insisted on the truth. However, my mother-in-law delivered the worst insult, suggesting that maybe I should stay home because it's too early for someone like me to travel abroad. She questioned my appreciation for the experience due to my lack of education and implied that I didn't deserve to go abroad, insinuating that I was unemployed. I was floored, having previously explained my job even during our greetings. When I confronted her, she looked down on me, dismissing my remote work as mere computer play. Fueled by frustration, she accused me of stealing Edward's earnings, belittling me further by deeming me uneducated and unemployed. The final blow came when she suggested that Edward, with his language skills and prestigious job, shouldn't waste his earnings on someone like me, a bottom feeder who should leave as soon as possible following her relentless tirade. Edward unexpectedly sided with his mother, suggesting that maybe I needed to cool off. His nonchalant remark made it clear that he was seemingly fed up with me. In that moment, I reached a breaking point and decided I couldn't endure this toxic parent-child dynamic any longer. Despite my mother-in-law telling me to leave, I wanted confirmation, and when she reiterated that I should go, I accepted. With a simple nod, I left the house, my mother-in-law calling after me with a sneer, mocking my supposed poor life as it suited a bottom feeder like me. As I left, they didn't realize that retribution would come their way. About 3 months after my departure, roughly when they were scheduled for their overseas trip, my mother-in-law frantically called me. Surprised that she managed to reach me, she explained their predicament. They were receiving collection letters and needed help. I questioned why they were facing such issues, to which my mother-in-law confessed that she didn't know about any of it. I revealed that I hadn't been paying the utilities, and when she asked why I hadn't informed her, I simply replied that it was expected. It seemed Edward had finally disclosed the truth about our financial situation. I had already started my own business, utilizing the expertise gained from the travel agency, and it was thriving. After leaving Hawaii, I returned to California, ensuring the divorce papers were properly drafted and promptly filed. The divorce went through smoothly, leaving Edward looking noticeably gaunt. It seemed he had been relying on my financial support even for the overseas trip. This revelation, however, didn't surprise me anymore. It turned out that both Edward and my mother-in-law had been living a luxurious lifestyle on my father-in-law's wealth until it ran out. Blinded by a temporary influx of cash, my mother-in-law had spent lavishly until nothing was left. Edward, aware of his low income, had turned to me for help, exacerbating their financial irresponsibility. As I listened to my mother-in-law's explanations, more shocking facts emerged. She had insisted on me living with them, not to keep an eye on her, but because she had been living off my father-in-law's wealth. Their debts, now totaling over $440,000, were a result of their extravagant spending. The level of dependency in these grown adults was beyond exasperation. My mother-in-law, audaciously asking for my help, was astonished when I refused. Edward, claiming that I had a duty to assist, pleaded for help, displaying an unwarranted sense of entitlement. In a moment of mercy, I proposed that they both start living more frugally and work hard to manage their debts. I made it clear that I had no intention of paying off their debts for them. Edward, frustrated with the reality of the situation, proposed getting a divorce to exchange it for financial relief. Unfazed, I agreed, and the divorce papers were swiftly processed. Upon my return to California, I ensured that their debts remained their responsibility, delivering the divorce papers and ending the call. About a week later, I heard from Edward, revealing that he had been counting on my money for their overseas trip. This lack of surprise was an acknowledgement of their misguided expectations. I stood firm in my decision not to bail them out financially and advised them to work hard to manage their debts. Jessica, on the other hand, had built a house in Hawaii and become a company president, mirroring my own success. She had her parents living with her, enjoying their time together. Inspired by Jessica's example, I called my parents from California, and we began living together in Hawaii. Occasionally, I visited Jessica, sharing our blessings and encouraging each other as we worked hard at our respective jobs. The experience served as a valuable lesson for both Jessica and me, emphasizing the importance of hard work and